Smart cities rise as utopias of efficiency, streets that sense your every move, buildings that predict your needs, algorithms that optimize life itself. Traffic flows flawlessly, energy is pristine, crime is predicted before it happens. But beneath the LED glow lies a total surveillance grid, where your data isn't just collected, it's the new currency of control. Every citizen, a node in an invisible network owned by governments and big tech, which are kind of one and the same in this day and age. Then come the biofoundries, vast automated factories reprogramming the very code of life. Bacteria churn out custom medicines, meats, and materials on demand. Scientists engineer microbes that eat plastic or glow on command. It sounds miraculous until you see the labs designing organisms with no natural limits, patents on life itself, and the quiet race to weaponize biology. At the heart of it all is biodigital convergence, of course, the fusion of flesh and code, neural implants that connect human beings to the internet and to AI, DNA data storage that turns your body into a hard drive, synthetic biology blurring where human ends and machine begins. Proponents call it the next evolution. Critics warn it's the ultimate takeover. Minds hackable, biology patentable, free will optional. Throughout the past few years, we've been exploring how all of these elements converge, be it smart cities, the wireless body area network, Internet of Things, Internet of Bio-Nano Things. Enter in Biofoundries within smart city limits, all powered by the edge, which we covered in our recent data center and smart city connection expose. And we have more answers for you today on all of it. Joining us after this short word from one of the sponsors who make our independent reporting possible is Edward Szall of Died Suddenly to discuss these new discoveries. Don't go anywhere and buckle up. Z Media is proud to partner with Aussie businesses that support freedom and believe in you and your family getting the best possible nutrition you can. Stockman Steaks is a third-generation family meat business supplying direct from freedom-loving Aussie farmers with pasture-raised, non-genetically modified, humanely raised local meat. Their meats are guaranteed mRNA-free. That's right, no mRNA in these grass-fed, antibiotic, hormone-free animals. By buying from Stockman Steaks, you'll be supporting Aussie farmers who share your values and are committed to giving you the best quality meat. Head to their store to see their delicious range of carefully selected meat boxes or create your own. Visit stockmansteaks.com.au/Maria. Support businesses that support us and give your family the nutrition they deserve. Ed Szall, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Always a pleasure to chat with you, Maria. You know, we're living in very interesting times, to say the least. It's exciting and scary because many of the things that you've been warning about for at least a decade now, we're in the implementation phase now, whether it be the IoT revolution or the very extremes of, I think, the fantastical plans that the enemy has been broadcasting for decades. They're here now, and we're now having to contend with nano, not in the body, not just in the body, rather, but also in a society that's controlled and manipulated by it.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. You say I've been warning for a decade, probably longer than that in lunchrooms where people would actually avoid me because it's like, I'm on my lunch break, Maria. Now is not the time. But certainly a few years doing it publicly. And I really appreciate all of your work on all of this as well, Ed. I know that this particular broadcast is going to be a joint effort looking at some of what we've discovered about the connections between the data centers, the smart cities, the biofoundries, which is a term that a lot of people aren't familiar with. We're going to go through some of that today. And then the sort of various ways of implanting humanity with sensors and nanotechnology, and how that all links with the data centers. And I think we have a much clearer picture now. Before we get into some of these links and findings, what has been the main theme that you've noticed as you've been going through this research, Ed? What's the main sort of theme or connector that you've seen?
Well, it's that big tech is no longer about search engines and artificially inflated budgets for social media platforms. I mean, that's the big tech of 20 years ago. The big tech now is about implementing a system of control and monetization and domination of the human body, and not from the outside. You know, there's a hyper focus, I think, on the technology of World War II. right? And World War II is an important time period because the world order was established, and a lot of the basic versions of the technology we're now looking at that have been miniaturized and that have been advanced, they were introduced. I mean, radar technology, for example, radar technology, you can date back, the creation of the internet and a lot of 5G and 6G to some of the radar dishes that were used on some of the carriers and some of the cruisers in the Pacific. But the biggest thing I've noticed is that we are now at a time period where it's no longer theoretical. You mentioned the biofoundries and the bioconvergence. I'd like to kind of just talk about is just the transhumanist movement in general. The implementation of technology into the body is not something from Black Mirror anymore. The data centers and the other investments which are now being made, they're being done so to not just monitor the body, but also to control the mind. And that's where we really start to lose society, is when not big tech alone, but big government paired with big tech through operations like Operation, Project Stargate. These things, when they have billions of dollars behind them, you now have a new breakaway civilization. And that's, I think, what stuck out to me.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I think, a lot of people are aware of the threat of big tech. They're aware of the surveillance systems, and all of these things, but perhaps don't understand the mechanisms of exactly how they're putting this in under the skin. And President Trump was very revealing when he said, when he was signing the sort of 6G executive order, if I can broadly call it that, and he said, what's this going to do? Allow us to see a little bit deeper under the skin. um and that was such a consequential moment, in my opinion, that a lot of people missed. Do you think he was aware of what he was saying?
I think it speaks to that paradigm I was just mentioning, is that I think for President Trump, it's dumbed down. It's given to him in pieces, and maybe how it will impact the economy as a whole. I think he's smart enough to understand economics. And I think for anybody who's selling this idea to him, and it's clearly been sold to him, because people that were his enemies were in the White House before even his wife, I think, had stepped place in the Oval Office. I'm talking about after the election in 24. And I'm speaking about people like Masayoshi Son, Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Altman, all people that only 5 years ago would have been funding the deplatforming and censorship of people like him. But I don't think he fully grasps where this is going, because maybe for him, he's not going to be alive for it. I think he's kind of accepted that. You hear him talk often now about how he's not going to heaven, right? I'm sure he's thinking about his end of life and these other things, but he doesn't think about what kind of society is being made right now for the children that will grow up over the next 50 years. And that's at the heart of 6G and these wearables. They call them wearables. They tell, well, let's be a little deeper inside the skin to see for the scans. He has no idea what he's talking about with that. It's way worse than that, okay? What I've seen with people who are serious is there's been a concerted effort to argue that we need to master this technology in order to defend against our enemies using it. That's probably, those people are actually being quite serious, Maria. And I of course, I don't buy that. I think we've seen enough now for the last 20 years that we certainly do not gain any more security by giving over more of our rights, especially the sovereignty of our body. But the other argument I've seen is that this kind of invasion into the body with nanotechnologies and advanced sensory matrices that are formed by outside devices and internal mechanisms like the nanotech, that's a way to defeat cancer. That's a way to help in surgical procedures. And Maria, it's you and I are looking at this like you literally would have to. I don't think they could. Even if they held us down, they put a gun to our heads. I think we'd shoot ourselves before we take anything that these monsters are putting together. But some people are going to be swayed by this. I think it's why they've been testing other waters, right? Trump was let's test the low IQ rhetoric and see what will happen when we talk about 5G as if it's a cartoon implementation. But for others, I think they're going to sell the idea of longevity and maybe eternal longevity. Some people like Brian Johnson, he just made an announcement on Twitter this week. Apparently, he has a version of Crohn's disease or some kind of autoimmune disorder. But he's that fellow who's been bioengineering himself and taking all kinds of drugs and different kind of procedures to try to live forever. It's
Yes, his
a younger
slogan
Ray
is
Kurzweil.
"Don't die," and
Yeah, exactly.
and his stomach is eating itself.
Yeah, that's what he said. And you know, you have to wonder. I mean, maybe he's coming to terms with his mortality. But in respect to the battle that I think we're going to fight for the next couple decades, the implementation aspect, and they've got the funding now. All they do to convince President Trump to open up the floodgates for trillions of dollars, and also circumventation of protocols and laws and regulations in the states, was to tell them how much money it's going to make for America.
Yeah,
We're over that Rubicon now. They've spent it. They've implemented just to defeat the data centers locally, by the way. And we're going to get into why they tie to the data centers. And it's essentially, it's the lifeblood. You need these data centers in order to run the massive amounts of data that's coming out of humans, coming out of systems. But we just defeated a measure here in Palm Beach in South Florida. And my gosh, I don't know if we've even defeated it yet, because this is how it went, Maria. Show up at the town hall, everybody's against it. This is like Utah, but in Florida, okay?
right.
Everybody's against it because we have a lot of credible data now to show the pollution of water, all right, the pollution of the environment. Everyone's against it. The recommendation is to not pass it, but it's still going to go to the county commissioners. And the thing is, the county commissioners don't have to listen to any of us. That's the crazy thing here. Even in America, they don't have to listen to us. So even though the recommendation from the regulation authority in Palm Beach is like, no, don't do this, it's bad. The zoning authority said no. The commissioners could still override it. And that's the
Interesting.
battle I've been fighting, because they're looking at it from an economic standpoint. Maria, they say, this is how much money it's going to build for the area. And Edward, why are you being such a Luddite? Well, I'm being a Luddite because this could be the system that builds the mark of the beast.
Yeah. Yeah, and all signs point to it is, by the way. Let me just say that flat out, because and we'll get into quantum dot as well throughout this broadcast, because I said this recently on a podcast that I was invited on, World War Now. Through everything that I've studied where biodigital convergence is concerned, and I certainly don't know it all, but have been looking into this for many years now. And the wireless body area network, the Internet of Things, Internet of Bio-Nano Things, all of these terms that, you know, people watching us right now are hopefully familiar with by now. If not, go back and watch the library. But all of the years that I've been looking at this, they may create something better than quantum dot, but they don't need to, is my point. Quantum dot is good enough from what I can see to run the mark of the beast system. So we have the technology already that is needed for that. And they are in the process through this entire digital convergence of our lives and biodigital convergence, both, to bringing us to that point. And they're going very aggressively at it. We've been speaking a lot about the digital ID efforts right now in America. Sort of the last stand is being assaulted with multiple bills, over 80 that I could find, around 80 across the US, multiple states, all digital ID related, largely led by Republicans. And I keep repeating that point because people need to know it's both sides in on it. So, they're getting very close, which I theorized recently also that it signals to me that they may be ready soon for an economic collapse, roll out the digital aspect, UBI, all that sort of stuff. I mean, we know that this is all the plan. Whether they fully succeed, I don't know. The aim of today's broadcast is to talk about the plan and what they are currently deploying. And so I just want to, before we get into that, I want to bring this up. You and I spoke about this recently, which was the new therapeutic brain implants could defy the need for surgery. This is MIT. And bear in mind again, guys, this is November of 2025 when they are telling you, oh, look at this new discovery. Generally, it's been around for a while and they're just telling you about it now. And they are actually telling you within this article, within this news piece, that through vaccines, they are going to be able to inject you with something that is going to be able to self-assemble inside the brain, a microchip that's going to be able to self-assemble inside your brain. And it clearly says here, in a study on mice, the researchers show that after injection, these minuscule implants can identify and travel to a specific brain region without the need for human guidance. And then once there, they can be wirelessly powered to provide electrical stimulation to the precise area. And they're obviously talking about neuromodulation here. So, we're going to cure Alzheimer's and MS and all of these wonderful things that they tell us they're going to do forget about the positives that they say. We know that almost in all cases, all technology, all scientific advancements can be dual use, just like gain of function. Oh, we're studying these viruses because we want to make sure that we don't get them, and then all of a sudden you have a bioweapon deployed on humanity. This is dual use stuff.
Well, 100%. And that technology is actually quite intriguing because the initial iterations of that technology were deployed on the Navy SEALs. They were chemical based, at least. They were trying to defeat certain functions of the frontal lobe, and that would help with PTSD. If I could tell you how many times I have been offered therapy for PTSD or other kind of war-related injuries with chips and with chemicals, I'd be a millionaire right now. I'd take $1 each time. But the funniest thing with it is that it's so much more advanced now. And what you're mentioning there with being able to drive it to different parts of the body, they've tried it all. They've tried actually physically remote controlling it through. It's inefficient. They can't do that on mass scale. Where they have kind of landed is, one, they're able to use tissue and fluids from animals that's like brain fluid or brain tissue. And what they're able to do is put a marker on it. And thus, when it enters the body, it's both a magnificent representation of God's creation in the sense of that when you put a brain cell in a body, the brain cell wants to go where the brain is, and it knows where the brain is. It's that part they haven't even been able to necessarily replicate to the place where God's got it, which is cells want to stay and function. So that you actually can do this with supplements, you can do this with certain drugs, and with this this kind of fluid, the cell from an animal, a cell from oh, I got disconnected. There we are. You were back? Yeah. Okay, I'm picking up there. With a cell from the body, or a cell from an animal's brain, you can take something directly to the brain or to the heart or to the gut, because that's where you might need that drug or that medicine. But the other way I've been seeing it done, and I think the nanotechnology labs are really working on this, where they're able to guide it there through frequency. And what's unique about that is, if you think about the permeation of frequency in an environment and in a school, I go to a lot of people's houses, a lot of people in our movement too. I was out at Mike Adams's ranch in the middle of nowhere, in Texas, about 2 weeks ago. And the thing about it all is that he's a huge privacy guy. You can't get cameras out there. You barely drive out there. It'll take you a long time to get to this place, but you'll still get cell signal. You'll still have satellite penetration. And I think that's why they went this direction with all the technologies, because no matter what you do, even if we've done this, for example, with some of our Faraday testing and some of our nanotechnology testing, it's so difficult, Maria, to remove all frequencies from an environment. Even if you have like a $100,000 Faraday cage, there are still now frequencies and still modulations that will pierce. And you best believe the body is way less adept at stopping a frequency from coming into the body than a $100,000 Faraday cage. So the frequency control via satellite, via low Earth orbiting satellites, or now on the edge with devices like your cell phone, like your computer, everything that has wireless or Bluetooth capability, it can now create a matrix of control where through that device and through a series of devices in a chain, your body now is part of the system.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's get into explaining how this all actually functions. And again, we don't claim to have absolutely every single answer, but as you and I have been looking into this more and more over the years, and the pieces are certainly starting to come together. And I'll just cite our recent data center report, which everybody needs to see. I'm going to link it in the description below, where it actually explains the triangulation happening with the data centers, why they are triangulating around smart cities, which we've confirmed with maps and map overlays, the edging that is taking place for real-time monitoring inside smart cities. And this is how the Biofoundries link in. But let's start at the beginning. So for anyone who missed this series that we did on the biodigital convergence, just literally look it up, Z Media Biodigital Convergence. It's about 3.5 hours, I think. One of the most comprehensive investigative pieces we've done on this subject. And what I just brought up on screen is an official Government of Canada publication talking about how they plan to merge human beings with biodigital. They plan to make us biodigital, right? Merge us with technology. Now, a lot of what's in there is obviously theory, and some may say pipe dreams. The problem is that we have actual scientists and biofoundries working on making this a reality. Therefore, I question how much of this is actually pipe dreams and rather already happening to us. For anyone that isn't familiar with what biodigital convergence is, I'll read you a quick definition here. It refers to the merging of biological systems, for example, living organisms, genomics, biotech, with digital technologies, which is AI, data, sensors, and computing. And it enables hybrid innovations where biology and digital elements interact, co-evolve, or integrate physically, such as embedding digital tech in natural organisms or using biological processes for computing and storage. And you would all recall I've brought up that that article before, Ed, maybe you're familiar with it, where it says using the human body as an antenna for 6G because we have all this wasted energy, so they're going to harvest our energy to power up 6G. Have you seen that?
I have seen that, and of course, it's a beckoning off of the Matrix, right? But it's been brought to life, and in the sense that these crazy elite, they don't just want to use our our brain power and our kind of focus energy. That has been sold off and monetized 2 ways from Sunday for advertisements and things. But I think that for them, whether they figure out a way to depopulate the earth, which of course is one of their goals, if they do have to still deal with us and contend with us, they'd rather be able to take the natural foundry, which is our bodies, and use it to power things. And I think at least 10 years ago, they kind of decided at least they weren't going to try to turn us into the replacement for power plants or nuclear power plants. But they have figured out that we can power localized devices quite well. And this I think when it comes to the implementation of actual hardware in people, you'll have people scoff at this, but I'll tell you who takes it very seriously. It's the transhumanist kind of break off elite, the ones that are wanting to live forever, the Brian Johnsons, the Ray Kurzweils. They are credibly looking at how their own heartbeat and the very energy their body is creating from the respiratory system, how that can now be used to power maybe a miniaturized version of a pacemaker, maybe an implemented hardware in your brain that allows you to scroll Twitter. This isn't a distant future anymore. We're here. There are people right now that are, through Neuralink, for example, that have brain implants, and they are controlling computers. They're looking and they're scrolling, looking around, and they're thinking, and they say at speeds at which me, and Maria, we wouldn't be able to compete with, right? They say this, but what they're not talking about is the burnout, the after effect, and of course the cancers, which are undoubtedly going to come, 10 years later after this usage. But no one cares about that in the short term, and that's why we have to battle this in the short term. The short term is that in order for them to do any of these things, whether it be the weaponization of the energy inside our bodies, or whether it be the actual spending, I think, justifying the spending for the different edge devices and towers and these other things, what they have to do first is they have to show and demonstrate benefit, right? Of course, the first benefit, I think, to anybody, right, why you would argue for an antenna inside a body is prevention, right? So they said in these articles, one of the reasons why they're doing this is so that you will find out that you have early onset of cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, heart disease. You'll know before any test is going to be able to tell you, unless you'll be able to go through chemotherapy or go through some kind of treatment in time to help you. But the problem with all of that is that obviously the end goal and what they love for, I think it's been the mecca of all these technologies, is that they wouldn't just be able to monitor your brain, but they would be able to influence you like the rats they're testing this technology on.
Yeah.
Right? They're always talking about the mice that are in the labs. I guarantee you every serious government in the world right now is trying to think how they might be able to influence voting. So I think cheating has been pretty obvious, but where we're at now is, what if you could engineer an outcome of an election by simply influencing the individuals in the country physically,
Well, that's what
biologically?
Yuval Noah Harari talks about, by the way, where he's like, you're not qualified on your own to decide. The algorithm
Right.
is going to figure out for you based on, the AI being integrated with you. And, you raise an important point, Ed, about Neuralink and things like that. And the common, vibe that I get from people is, well, I would never do that. And of course you wouldn't. The problem is we're talking about covert applications here. We're talking about them doing it to us without us even realizing. And when you look at the broader agenda for smart cities and end goal mark of the beast, there's a lot of deception involved to get us to that point. And much of that, I believe, firmly involves this merge with technology. It's why there's such a push for it. And when we talk about the relationship between biodigital convergence and this smart city future, they say, official sources will say that in smart cities the role of biodigital convergence is emerging but not yet central or widespread compared to things like digital twins, Internet of Things, AI and data platforms. And it extends smart capabilities into living, adaptive, and sustainable systems by treating urban environments as biological digital hybrids rather than purely engineered ones. Here's the problem. The talk about this isn't widespread or central, but when you look at organizations such as the IEEE, which show you how the future of digital currency is going to function, and they just so happen to present at their conference a graphic of a person with a mark on their right hand that links to their forehead.
Wow. Gosh. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen that. See, the
Oh, yeah.
IEEE is such an interesting organization because they, I'd say 15 years ago, were seen as like protectors of digital privacy. That's the only time you'd hear about the IEEE, but very few people, and I'm glad you brought it up, very few people know that they are quite globalist in their agenda, quite atheistic, and they're actually for many of the digital convergences. They just want to have I think they started at least, and they got their funding from the allure of there being some form of privacy still in a digital era. Yeah, my gosh, to show that so blatantly. I mean, we saw this at the Mobile World Congress when we attended in Barcelona. The elite were buying pizzas with this, and this is 5 years ago now. This is not something for this year. It's long, I think, been looked at. I think what it looks at a lot of the systems. So you talk about the edge. I often I try to pay attention to local real estate, and we're always wondering when the next crash is going to happen. The crash on commercial real estate has been ongoing for at
Yes.
least a decade. There was a mall that was just shut down in our town. The back in the day, cities used to fund the creation of a mall, and then they would make money, or they'd at least sell off the property, and they make money off the property tax. But the mall used to be the mecca of commerce. We have slowly but surely, over the last 20 years, been kind of acclimated to online ordering, online commerce, and we're there now. I think even for the hard set people, I'll admit for my family, we probably spend half our shopping is online now through Amazon or through Publix. They'll order to us, and the problem with this is that any one of these things alone they're not terrible. They're quite inconvenient. But again, it's the multi-structured approach to how you sell it to society. Because of course, if you go up to people, I guess there are going to be some people that you offer them the mark of the beast just outright. They are going to take it because they're evil and they're already preconditioned for this. Most of them are not going to do it. But if they're told it brings convenience, they will take the crumbs. They'll take the bait. And once you're inside a system, that's a very hard time to get out of it.
It's not just that it brings convenience, it's that it brings survival. You
Mm.
can't buy or sell without it, meaning you can't feed your kids without it, in theory. God will always provide, in my view. But for many, that's going to be a very difficult decision. And so we want to again explain the mechanics around this. So digital twins and smart cities, there are a multitude of bits online that you can read about this. We've reported on this extensively. Now they will talk to us about how it's convenient because they can do traffic management and things like this, but the idea is to have real-time monitoring of everything happening in a smart city for optimal oxygen levels, optimal traffic flow, optimal whatever. It's also about tracking what's happening under your skin. And there is a digital twin of you as well. It's not just your surroundings, it is you as well. And the way that they do this, we're talking about precision monitoring of genomics, biometric sensors, and AI that are not only analyzing urban biodiversity, ecosystems, and human biology interactions in real time, it's also enabling human augmentation. So you're talking about real-time public health monitoring, which, by the way, is all done by AIs that are programmed by people that have our worst intentions at heart, right? But personalized air quality alerts or epidemic tracking, for example, well, we've warned many times, Ed, and it's been published on multiple occasions, that they are looking at preemptively injecting populations to quote unquote prevent pandemics. And if you have an AI that's been programmed to say, if you spot this anomaly, which is like not even a threat, but it spots it, oh, everyone must get this injection right now in order to prevent this upcoming pandemic. And by the way, we know what's going on inside your body and we know you haven't taken it. And therefore, your banking account gets shut off. You can't pay your mortgage or your rent or whatever the case may be. You can't pay your power bill. And people will say, well, I own my house outright. Okay, you can't pay your property taxes, actually. What happens then? So we're talking about something that is a system of control that has never been seen before on Earth. And when you're talking about the biodigital urban design, it is responding to human physiology. And I recall as well, Ed, when I was looking at the smart city plans for Newcastle in Australia, and it was talking about street furniture that's monitoring human behavior. Like, you have park benches that are monitoring your behavior and potentially your sentiment as well, because they talk about sentiment tracking. How are you feeling about all of this? What's your sentiment? Are you likely to maybe possibly commit a crime in future? According to Palantir, probably, right? So this is really, really important when people think about this stuff. It's all about monitoring beneath the skin. And this is important now when this is something that I found when we were digging into this, the localized production and quote unquote resilience of smart cities. How does this all fit in? Biomanufacturing, meaning synthetic biology, essentially, combined with digital control cloud, could enable on-site production of food, materials, pharmaceuticals, or biofoundries. And here we enter into the topic of biofoundries, which I found to be a really nightmare scenario, Ed. And I'll just bring this up for everyone before I throw it to you. Ginkgo Bioworks is one of these huge biofoundries. It says Ginkgo Bioworks and Google Cloud partner to build next generation AI platform for biological engineering and biosecurity. This is next level gain of function.
Well, it's the use of, I think, the AI revolution too, to make it very personalized for each individual. You know, the creation of bioweaponry in the past required you to develop and really kind of weaponize and refine a strain or a certain series of strains of a virus, and kind of add different parts to it and make it more deadly to a human being. The unique thing about the implementation of this with AI and with, again, the data from someone's bodies, you know, that, well, not just their DNA, but specifically the things which their body's going through right now. Because a baseline for a human being, your immune system could vary. You know, you could be just getting off a cold, you could be getting into a situation where your immune system is weaker, and there's certain holes in the wall, as one might put it, that AI might be able to identify by looking through swaths of data about your body, not just your heartbeat, not just you know, your nutrition density, but maybe markers inside your body of things you might be more susceptible to over long term. You know, I think when it comes to especially these digital foundries, these biofoundries, they are a great magnet of funding. Because you think, well, what has Google really been doing, and what have some of these bigger organizations been doing? You know, we traveled out to Silicon Valley and to some of the hotspots of development. You know, where we previously would have looked at as the home of Twitter and Facebook and the FANGs. What we found, Maria, is that there has been this explosion of biotech firms which have popped up right next to Facebook, for example, right next to their campus. And you start to, we start to ponder what exactly could those be for, right? Well, you start looking at biofoundries. Many of these companies and these breakoffs, what they're doing now is they're providing, one the data analysis services to biotech firms, because whenever you put a sensor inside a human body, Maria, and you're monitoring someone for a long period of time, it generates an insane amount of data.
Oh, yeah.
Data that unless you have the capability to actually work through it and try to make sense of it, it's useless to you. But that again, why the advent of ChatGPT, Claude, and these other kind of technologies, which not only have been introduced, but also we've been acclimated to. Most people in society over the course of a year are now using these chatbots and using these AIs and with ease. They understand it. There's been a market kind of education that's occurred very rapidly, where if someone was told, "Oh, this is taking the data from your body, and for the first time in history now, we're going to be able to use it to keep you safe, to help you to find the cancer cells and find the ways to protect you from a smallpox attack." Most people would say, "Why, I like that. It makes me feel safe. It's like having a policeman on the corner, but now the policeman's inside of me." Of course, the argument against it is that this is a bad cop. Okay, it's not a good cop. Okay,
Yeah, it's looking for the evidence inside of you. And I've made this statement before, and it's that your own body will betray you. Like when I look at patent 060606, and when I look at what the UN says about you're only going to be rewarded digital currency if you're behaving in a way that is congruent with the AI world society as as an AI digital citizen, that's the only way you can earn money. Well, your own body's data is going to betray you if you have these sensors inside of you. And again, we're talking about the potential covert application of this. So let me just dig in a little bit more with the biofoundries. So you have the relation that you have to the core smart city technologies. Biodigital convergence builds on and converges with dominant smart city tools like digital twins, Internet of Things, AI, Internet of Bio-Nano Things. All of these things are happening, and the IoT sensors, or the Internet of Bodies sensors, are feeding genomic and biometric data into AI for predictive adaptive management. So you're talking about cyber biological or living smart cities, as the Melbourne experiment called it, a living lab experiment. That's what they called it. And of course, you have the potential misuses, including biosecurity and bioweapons development, surveillance, control, and human augmentation, because biofoundries rely on massive amounts of genomic, biometric, and health data sets. Obviously, big tech, Silicon Valley, could integrate this with existing data empires for unprecedented profiling. And of course, we have the economic and geopolitical dominance, this AI arms race, though I think they're all working together nonetheless. It's still an issue. And of course, the hacking aspect. Okay, someone hacks a biofoundry that has all of this genomic data. And again, the purpose of a biofoundry, just to really explain it to people, you have these biofoundries now collecting all of this information about human beings, our DNA, all of it. And then the analysis that they're finding, including human augmentation capabilities, they're feeding to these biotech firms. And in fact, I've confirmed that big pharma and the biotech firms are relying on what the biofoundries are discovering about us to then manufacture drugs tailored to us. You're also talking about AI telling them maybe years in advance, hey, we have all this data about all these people, their next epidemic created or manufactured or not. For example, the COVID shots, they knew cancer would be a result of this, probably because they used AI for that in the first place anyway. And then AI can tell the biotech companies, there's going to be a huge market for cancer vaccines in the future, and this is what you're going to be focusing on. And they're providing that data to biotech and big pharma. And so it's a recipe for disaster. And let me just tell everyone what they're actually focusing on. You currently have an unbelievable amount of these biofoundries, and they're growing. The industry's growing. So you have Agile Biofoundry, which is in the USA. It's distributed across Department of Energy national labs. And the key focus is design, build, test, learn automation for biomanufacturing. And it's a major US effort at the moment, actually integrating AI and robotics with, I guess, your genome. Then we have University of Illinois iBiofab, or NSF iBiofoundry. that is focused on synthetic biology, protein engineering, AI integration. They've recently expanded. London Biofoundry, focusing on high throughput DNA assembly in mammalian systems. Kobe Biofab in Japan, engineering biology. Remember what that Pfizer guy said? I can't remember his name now. When he said we are, what did he say? We're engineering biology, or how did he put it? Do you remember, Ed?
You talking Burla? You talking about Burla?
No, it was the guy that James O'Keefe, I think, caught on in a sting. Directed evolution. That's what he called it. Directed
Directed
evolution.
evolution.
Yeah. So this is essentially what that is. You have a Singapore automated DNA assembly and screening, Australian Genome Foundry, also listed as CSIRO, synthetic biology for the bioeconomy. So there's a bioeconomy to do with your biology. Korea, microbial cell factories, and Ginkgo Bioworks as well in the USA, which is a commercial organism as a service foundry. You also have them that exist in China, Denmark, Canada, Finland, recently announced in India, South Korea, another one in UK, another one in the USA. Ongoing expansions are happening in China, Europe. So, I mean, this is growing exponentially as we speak. And most people I've mentioned it to, Ed, have no idea. They don't know about this.
Oh, sure. But it's being funded by them. And that's the thing about the technology revolution. The personalization of each, the products that are coming out of these biofoundry labs, the sell to the public is going to be through the deployment of weight loss drugs, anti-cancer drugs, and things which are just so much more effective in their eyes than the previous generations of these drugs and these protocols. But in truth, the big kind of double-edged sword with many of this research is that when we're delving through the genome and looking and developing these mass databases, you mentioned about leaking. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that 23andMe, that their database leaked when the company, quote unquote, went bankrupt, and people's DNA that had since been kind of sitting dormant, that the sequences were basically sent out to the four corners. I think for things like that and much
leaked.
more. Yeah, leaked. Yeah, and it's comical because the biofoundries. Honestly, I think that as we go back to this, it is a credit to the great majesty of God and just the creation that we are. I mean, to replicate us and to create the functionality to replicate what the heart does, to replicate what the brain does, is immensely hard. But we're speaking now about what it even means to be alive. What does it mean to be a human? Because when it comes to AI, I think everyone has got at least an understanding that the AI still is not responding to you in a human way, right? I think that maybe one of the aspects they seek to develop through these biofoundries is they would love to finally be able to bridge that last divide, which is how do you make a chemical dependency and connection past the dopamine feedback loop, past the kind of acclimation that we have from being bathed in frequencies through Wi-Fi all day. How do you get past that and where it's actually like a human connection, an electric connection, like love, right? I think to do this, they of course have to create drugs and create mechanisms which are tailored to your body.
Yes.
Not much different in your body, very similar. Your body won't be able to tell the difference between an artificial synthetic biocreation and again the cells themselves that grow inside your this great factory that the Lord has given us. But it does seem again that the focus will be on cancer and will be on weight loss. I think with weight loss they've made a huge swaths of advancement. Many people didn't ask twice what Eli Lilly was doing with Ozempic, right? How many people in the right, left wing, it doesn't matter where you are politically, it doesn't matter where you're at religiously for that matter. Many people took it not caring if it had exposure to dead children and other things. But the truth was, I think that playing to our vanity and again, our mortality was the route they've gone. And now it's funded an entire generation of these Frankenstein labs that you just listed.
Yeah, you're so right. And One of the most shocking moments to me was hearing RFK Jr. tell us how Ozempic was going to make America healthy again after he spent,
Mm.
all this time talking about how terrible it was. But nothing should surprise us in this day and age. But it's a combination of that deception playing into our vanity. You're right. But it's largely deception. How anyone could get any injection now, Ed, is beyond me. Like even anesthetic, like I can't trust any of it, like that's where I'm at. But hopefully through discussions like this, people will be more aware, because obviously I'm not, assuming that I can stop this entire agenda. I'm not, like, what kind of hubris is that? What I'm just hoping that we can achieve is educating people so that they can be aware. Because, of course, from our data center report, you see how they're planning on pushing people out of rural areas, making it unlivable in order to push you into the edge, the triangulation of the data centers around the smart cities, because that's where the resources will be available. In the rural areas, they plan to make it pretty much impossible. So, the more people understand about Endgame, the more fervent they'll be in opposing this and protecting their areas. In terms of the Biofoundry link to the data centers, we showed you that cloud partnership with Ginkgo and Google. Then we go into how do biofoundries actually alter DNA. So it's done through automated high throughput processes in the build phase. I think I might have already explained this, but basically you have the design in silico, where they're also synthesizing of DNA building blocks and then assembly of DNA, which is a key step in biofoundries. It says that they excel at automated assembly of multiple fragments into functional constructs. And I won't get into all the technicals around this, but I wanted to give people the highlights. This is their focus. Their focus is literally changing what it means to be human, thinking, and selling it as solving health problems for us. And this is the whole move of biotech, by the way. It's not conspiratorial in any way. Musk says, we'll be able to cure all these diseases with AI. This is what they're selling it to us as. Meanwhile, what they're trying to do is alter your God-given DNA, and continue to alter it like a software upgrade. That's what I see this as. And they have genome editing and integration. We can talk about the efficiency of them, but I don't want to focus too much on that. In essence, biofoundries treat DNA like programmable code. They design it digitally, synthesize or build it robotically, and then edit and integrate it precisely, often with CRISPR, and iterate rapidly with data-driven feedback. And this shifts biology from manual trial and error to engineered and scalable manufacturing. Now, this is like an unbiased look at it, right? So we're giving people just the facts, and then they can decide for themselves whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because there is a very, very important function of graphene and hydrogel when it comes to the biofoundries and their relationship with biotech, which we'll detail in a moment. But just in your experience, Ed, because I know you've been looking at this, talk to us about the importance of graphene and hydrogel in transhumanism.
Well, of course, with graphene, it's very familiar with people in our sector, because when it came to the COVID-19 shots, the graphene that was placed inside of the different cocktails, which were delivered through Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, the graphene served as a binding agent, also served as a kind of a connectivity force. Well, graphene was first discussed as maybe a replacement for more expensive metals, silver and other things which have been used as adjuvants in previous vaccines. The beauty of graphene, I think, for many of the elite when they were looking at using in this, is that it persists in the body. It is a great conductive metal. And also it can be miniaturized and moved around, and it seems to survive and be quite malleable inside the human body, inside the bloodstream. And when we looked at the fibrous clots that were discovered by embalmers, back we talked about a couple of years ago to this point, 2022, 2023. One of the aspects of that that kind of allowed it, and I think has now progressed into the technology which might be able to move around in your body, be able to interact with different organs, and be able to actually be transmitted to. Graphene is a great receptor. It is the one of the metals and one of the substances which can be used very effectively to manipulate and to direct DNA and direct the construction of nanostructures inside the body. So it's kind of shocking to see again that it's playing such a big role, but there's nothing new under the sun. Of course, I guess they wanted to implement graphene inside the biofoundries because of the
Yes.
success they saw during the COVID-19 rollout.
Certainly, I think that was the case. And for all of the detractors from that, I had someone recently critique something and ask that I pulled it down. And my response was, we're at this point, it's 2026. The fact that people are still acting as though there may be things that they don't understand about these shots that are beyond their scope of understanding is astounding
Mm.
to me. Like, you don't know everything. You don't even know the full ingredients list, and you don't know the entire manufacturing process either unless you were there at the time. So let's stop playing like we know it all. And I'm certainly not claiming certainty around a lot of these things, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this has already been deployed. And certainly when we hear Albert Bourla of Pfizer, many years ago talking about how we can ensure compliance through pills that track everything inside of you. Well, how does that happen? With graphene, actually. So the graphene actually is central to Biofoundries because they help close the test-learn loop. And I brought up a thing before about nanopore sequencing. So they use graphene nanopores for single molecule DNA sequencing inside the Biofoundries. And then you also have biosensors and quality control. So graphene-based sensors detect DNA hybridization, mutations or off-target edits in real time. They have high sensitivity down to attomolar, and integration with microfluids make them suitable for high throughput validation. And of course, you have DNA delivery and functionalization. Graphene plays a role in that as well. Now, hydrogels actually play a more prominent role and a more practical role than graphene and DNA-related processes because of biosensing, cargo delivery, controlled release, and smart materials that support or extend the DNA alteration workflow. They're not central to the core biochemical steps of DNA synthesis or assembly, which rely on enzymes, robotics, and chemistry, but they are increasingly used in CRISPR, responsive systems verification, and applications downstream of editing. So, of course, we have CRISPR responsive smart hydrogels, and I'll just bring that up for everyone right here. CRISPR responsive RCA-based DNA hydrogel biosensing platform with customizable signal output for rapid and sensitive nucleic acid detection. How long ago were they writing about this, Ed? Well, this is all the way back from 2024. Self-assembly of a multimeric genomic hydrogel via multi-prime chain reaction of dual single-stranded circular plasmids for cell-free protein production. Now, that's a lot of words to essentially tell you this is already being used. They use it for DNA editing. Hydrogel is highly effective in this process. And what I found was that it's also relevant to the manufacturing process as well. And there are advantages to this hybrid of graphene oxide and hydrogels, by the way. Not saying they use it in every instance, but certainly graphene oxide makes soft DNA hydrogels much tougher and more stable. It adds conductivity and quenching properties for sensing, and they're biocompatible, by the way, and programmable. So it retains the DNA sequence specific responsiveness while gaining graphene's durability. And how does this relate to Biofoundries? Well, graphene DNA hydrogels are more common in downstream applications, which is the research integrating synthetic biology with nanomaterials. So then comes the relationship with the new drug development. So then, because they are accelerating the DBTL cycle, which we spoke about before, which relies on graphene in synthetic biology, they're making drug discovery and development faster, cheaper, more scalable, all of that sort of stuff. But really, it connects to the core role in drug discovery and development. That's what the whole biotech industry is about. Biotech, if I could summarize it in one word, is transhumanism. Would you agree with that summary, Ed?
Yeah, I would. And it's personalized, a lot of it. I think Before they would have needed prisoners, and they did do this to prisoners. They didn't, whether it be a prisoner of war, or whether it be a prisoner in a deep South prison that no one cares about, a jailhouse where prisoners are being experimented on. There's been plenty of this in the history of the United States. No longer do you need this per se. These biofoundries are, in a sense, a synthetic or an artificial way to experiment on swaths of the human race. Through, again, the creation, or I'd say rather manipulation of a digital twin of an individual, a snapshot of their body, but also a look at how you can, without much oversight, with little questioning, because not many people really understand much of what this person might be doing, or this company, or this corporation, when they're manipulating DNA. They get to do grand human experiments without the humans involved, and the results are a very personalized drug, a very personalized, concept or implementation mechanism. And then they talk about the hydrogel and the graphene part of it is that it helps to carry whatever Frankenstein they've created in the lab now, which is now paired to look much like your DNA. That your body would accept it. Your body's not going to treat it as an outside entity, which your immune system would then destroy this thing. Now the body feels like it's part of it. Thus, a sensor now can be part of a chain of molecules in the body, like never before in history. And the self-assembling part of it is such a mind boggle to most people. But to understand this, the mad scientists who have been developing this technology, they long wanted to figure out how they could place things inside human beings without surgery. People hate surgery. Surgery is very invasive. With this kind of technology they're talking about, you could inject something very small, a series a fluid into the body that is carrying hydrogel with these mechanisms inside the hydrogel now being carried throughout the body. And you could do it where all you have to do is convince them to take a shot. And plus, where the technology is going, it's not just going to be shot based. It's not very effective, I think, to do it through edibles and these other things, because you have to deal now with the stomach. However, it's still possible. There are plenty of drugs which can be delivered orally, and with this technology, I think especially that there's a way to use the human gut, which is quite a synthesis of processes. But one of the things it does a great job of is absorbing anything that comes into the body. The stomach acid doesn't destroy much. It doesn't destroy everything, rather, that comes through it. You can absorb it if it looks like food, or it looks like nutrition. It looks like something that has been synthesized, not with your body, let's say, but rather with a cow's. Right? It looks like meat. Your body's going to process it like meat. Thus, you get this Frankenstein creation into the body without the system stopping it.
Well, we already have the evidence of sort of weaponized yeast, weaponized enzymes. These are things that you would be absorbing, actually. So, that's not too far of a stretch at all. And just to give people an idea of how widespread this is, it says, according to, multiple areas of research that we've sort of compiled here, hybrid graphene DNA hydrogels or smart materials improve targeted delivery of new drug candidates. And essentially, then they integrate the AI into it, and that gives these biotech companies, reliable data for drug development, I guess. But the industry leaders at the moment, you've got Ginkgo, Zymogen, Twist Bioscience, and academic facilities like Agile Biofoundry, which are deeply involved with pharma partnerships, deeply. And the investment trend is that big tech and pharma collaborations are increasing, for example, using cloud compute for AI and biofoundry automation. So the money's already there. The big tech's already there. It's just that humanity's not aware that this is what's happening. Now, here's where the other smart city connection comes in, and what we were sort of talking about before. But you have the wireless body area network and Internet of Bio-Nano things acting as a critical last mile, if you will, that interface that connects the outputs of biofoundries with smart cities and new drug development. They bridge the biodigital convergence by enabling seamless data flow and actuation between nanoscale biological devices, the human body, and broader digital ecosystems. So you have the smart cities that are providing the macro infrastructure that integrates the wireless body area network, and the Internet of Bio-Nano things with the data that the biofoundries are processing. So let me just describe a real sort of nightmare scenario. You're stuck in these smart cities, or even outside. By the way, this is possible outside the smart cities. It's just much more efficient in there, which is why they want people in there, because it's real-time monitoring as opposed to maybe not so real-time outside. But inside, you're in there. They are at all times analyzing what's going on inside your body through the various sensors that have been covertly implanted. And we know, by the way, through the work of Dane Wigington, that they're dropping this stuff in chemtrails. Like, it's not even, we don't know how far it's gone, but when you look at smart dust and the capabilities of it and the self-assembly of it, this could be something that's been going on for years, is what I'm saying. And anyone who thinks that's a stretch, please just go back and watch our archives. But like, I'm not even going to address the possibility of it. It's happening. But you're in the smart city. You have these sensors that are feeding the data into the biofoundries. They're reporting to big tech and big pharma. The AI is analyzing everything. Oh, this person could potentially create a pandemic, or this needs adjustment. This part of their DNA or something inside their body needs adjustment. Therefore, let's send them this drug, or command them to come to this center to get this drug to adjust this to prevent a health problem or something of this nature. That's a very real scenario that people could be facing in smart cities. And it's one, by the way, Ed, that Policy Horizons Canada describes in their vision of the future. They say, you know, you wake up, the AI is sensing everything going on inside your body, and it's saying you're missing this nutrient or whatever, and then it's going to 3D print what you need from your counter, or mandate that you go and take XYZ. And it could be they're telling you it's just vitamin C. Meanwhile, it's actually altering your DNA in the meantime. Sounds super dystopian. Don't think it's a stretch. I'm keen to hear your thoughts.
No, certainly not. And I think that it's never going to be in the sense of an application that's going to help you, and in that it'd be so harmless as, oh, well, you just woken up and you need something. The government is not looking to do this. They're looking at ways to pacify the population. You know, the smart cities where everything is essentially alive now. Everything has its own senses. You know, it can hear, it can see, it can smell. This isn't so much of like a city of animals in that sense, but it's more of that each device now has a capability and has built-in functionality and hardware that it now can measure things. And I think one of the things I heard, and I was reading through this kind of application on the security end, there's an argument that's been made that you would be able to apply to the public a dopamine cycle. Like, let's say we know at a very basic level that if you've ever watched a child with an iPad, that the dopamine feedback loop is disastrous. I mean, that kid will lose his mind if he loses his iPad, right? Some of these kids have been unfortunately raised in this manner. But we know that if the human body is exposed to certain light, exposed to certain sensory activation, you'll feel better. Like, there'll be a chemical release. I think where this technology would love to go is that when you enter these controlled grids, essentially, and you're living amongst this level of domination and lack of privacy and sovereignty, that you wouldn't just be caged, but you would also be barred from your brain going in a very venturous manner, such as, why am I inside of this? Why don't I free myself from this slavery? Ultimately, I think that the end goal of much of this is not just to monitor us, but is to control us, right? And to control us in a manner where we no longer will think for ourselves. We'll not want to have this individual thought, but rather we'll rely on the very advanced weaponry, advanced futuristic technology of the government now, and the government coming in as almost a version of our savior. Now, that truly is a hell that you can only imagine through Black Mirror, but that is the future that they seek to build.
I really have spoken about this before, and I encourage people to watch it if they haven't. Go and see the movie Equilibrium, and see how there's this controlled environment where you are required to take, X amount of shots a day. And then all of a sudden, when the main character stops doing that, all hell breaks loose. It really is that sort of reality. And I think, we're all aware of predictive programming and the revelation of the method and these types of tactics that they use to infer consent. And, these movies don't come out for no reason. And more we're seeing so much of what was presented to us as science fiction becoming science reality. And I think equilibrium's a good, a good sort of, one of the
Example, a
areas.
good
Yeah.
metaphor. No,
Yes. Yes, it
that
is.
is they use these films, Maria, to present their vision because again, through entertainment, this is actually a great analogy, I think, for the digital twin and for this biofoundry concept is that when you're watching a film, you're watching it for entertainment. That's how your brain's processed it. Your guard isn't up. You're when you see the things on screen and you're being introduced to different concepts, you're not thinking, oh my gosh, I'm about to be indoctrinated by the government. But nonetheless, there's a lot of examples in film of just that happening. In the sense of the biofoundries, they want to create things which your body sees as not a threat, something that your body will accept and what your brain will accept because you've been convinced that it's helpful, right? It's almost a masking. It's providing a costume for things which previously would have considered to be poisons or be intrusion, now are considered to be a candy, right? And these cities, by the way, Equilibrium is an interesting example because in that film, and even The Matrix, they present these really futuristic dystopian kind of landscapes. The truth is, the implementation of these smart cities, they don't have to build them from ground up. Plus, that's super expensive. You look at like the Neom, attempt. They might still actually make something in the next 10 years, but where you have seen major advancements is in cities that have allowed the gradual integration, whether it be the erection of different towers on different parts of the city. We saw this during the pandemic. There was plenty of 5G towers which were placed and throughout the cities. But more than this, every device and every electronic component that we buy now, whenever they try to tell you that it has now the advanced capabilities to integrate in with Claude, with the AI that you're using, the Chat GPT, what they're really telling you is that device or that mechanism, whether it be a sticker or whether it be a computer system they're using to charge people in your coffee shop, that has now been added to the list of usable devices in the grid, the matrix. Each of these devices can listen to you. Each of these devices now can be used to transmit things to you. I mean, this is the next frontier. The development of drugs, I think, is something that many people haven't even conceptualized. What if the government, instead of spraying you with water to cool you down, because there was a heat wave throughout Europe, for example, what if they misted a substance which has now been developed through a biofoundry to subdue you to something that, a riot now turns into a sleep fest because everybody in that riot, or everyone who's acting violently, has been subdued through a chemical reaction.
Oh, James Giordano said years ago that they could do that. James Giordano said years ago. He said we can lace the tip of a pen and cause an entire resistance to collapse. So, that compared with, your ops and everything, I mean, it's like they've got all their bases covered. It's unbelievable. I want to, because I know we're nearing the end here, Ed, and I appreciate you sticking with us for a little bit longer. The IEEE website, just for anyone who isn't aware, they pose as the global community for technological professionals. Of course, they are setting standards for the internet, much like an ISO standard in the customer service industry, for example. I personally, in my former life, had to go through an ISO standard in finance. To get certification to be able to do a certain part of my role, this is what it is. This exists for the internet as well. And the IEEE is the organization that issues those standards. And I've found many, and this is in no way an exhaustive list, but some of the standards that they've issued are for wireless body area networks, low rate wireless personal area networks, which includes the medical body area network, by the way. The communications architectural functional framework for smart cities, human augmentation, various smart city and health standards. So you're talking about an organization that already sees this future that we're talking about, including the human augmentation piece, and is issuing standards for it. You don't need to issue standards for something that isn't possible. Why would you waste your time?
Exactly. Well, and they're doing this to make it very easy.
Right.
It shows that they're not in competition with one another. Each of these firms, they're all reaching toward the same mission, the same goal. which again is if you're wanting to race toward a reality where you can control the average person and you can circumvent any oversight and any kind of intervention from a concerned populace, then you need to remove a lot of the obstacles which come from, especially the technology sector. Everyone knows this. You got anyone who's set up a TV or lives in the digital age, you know there's 400 different cables for everything. Well, they used to be. There has been a kind of a normalization in this field where there's only one HDMI cord, only one USB-C cell phone charger. These are the cores most people interact with. In the sense of what this IEEE, what they're doing is they're making it so each of the firms, which are numerous that are working on this, they no longer are going to have to waste time programming for different bandwidths and different coded frequencies. These things they're normalized, they're standard, and it means that there's a lot of interoperability between different devices and even between people. Because I think the direction they want to go is it would be these self-replicating technologies inside of us would talk to one another without you and I even knowing that our bodies are communicating to another person's body or to a device around us. And this is already taking place, by the way, the World Cup. So you'll see a lot of stories about this in the next coming months. But I got a little bit of a preview because you mentioned this at the beginning. It's funny that, and not funny in this sense, that Republicans and conservatives, it appears that the enemy seems to get so much more done in their agenda under Republican or conservative administrations. In America specifically, I'll use that as the best example. It's hard to go to war when the Democrats in, because everyone's got their guard up. Everyone's looking and saying, no, they're going to waste money on this, or they're trying to drone strike a bunch of Arabs in the Middle East for our freedom. Right? It's sold under a Republican administration. I bring this up to say that so you have Rudy Giuliani's son, who is in charge of the security and in charge of a lot of the planning for the FIFA World Cup that's going on. So right now, there's been some interesting stories that come out of the World Cup, and of course, everyone's just paying attention to what's on screen. But what you're not seeing on screen is the mass tracking that the DHS had to implement in order to watch a lot of people of concern, a lot of people from the Arabic world, for example, that they wanted to watch, were coming to the United States to watch their teams or to travel between many different cities. And there has been a wide advancement and deployment of a lot of this smart tech. I would argue that the TSA and the DHS has not made this kind of advance since the beginning of those microwave machines that they deployed throughout the country. They used the World Cup as an excuse to deploy much of the bioscanning technology. We're past even like the facial scanning, which everyone has kind of accepted, by the way. It's not even an optional thing anymore. You have to go up to the counter. They don't even care if you show them your passport. They know who you are because you're walking through the airport. But the part people don't know about yet is that the airports themselves, in anticipation for the World Cup, were all outfitted with biodigital sensors, not just for eyes and the face, but for smell, for molecules. They have these sensors in every airport in the country now, thanks to the World Cup.
Wow. Kind of reminds me of the LA Olympics, where they were essentially setting up the entirety of LA for smart city because they need it for the Olympics. And then, what was really interesting about that, Ed, is that Children's Health Defense, a law firm associated with them, actually defeated that. And a judge ruled that they're not allowed to do that, that it's actually a violation of the First Amendment to implement a smart city, which was a fantastic ruling.
Wow.
And it is, by the way.
Amen to that. Yeah.
So, but what happened then? They set the place on fire, and now they're calling it LA 2.0. I wonder if the LA ruling applies to LA 2.0. I don't know, but this is an interesting theory. And it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But that was a fantastic ruling, and one I fully agree with, because anything that is going to violate your body in a way that could impact your ability to speak freely, including augmenting you without your knowledge or monitoring what you're saying to someone, that is actually a violation of the First Amendment. Flock cameras are a violation of the First Amendment. And I really hope that people start to fight for that principle more and more as we, continue getting into this surveillance state nonsense, because it matters so much. And the US is the last place on earth that people have a chance to fight this actually,
Oh, certainly.
on free speech grounds, I'm saying.
Well, it's the last one of the last bastions of a free society. I think it's this talk of birthright citizenship has gotten a lot of people looking at the Constitution and looking at this talk of birthright citizenship has got a lot of people who are interested again in the in how to deal with birthright citizenship, but they're looking now and saying, oh, wait a minute, the country itself is one of the only countries in the world where you can come to this country and you can become an American or become like that person in that country. It's there's that you can't do this in France, you can't do this in Turkey, you can't do this in any other country in the world, and it's because of the concept that you kind of accept and you also agree to when you come to this country. And without these foundations, the grand experiment has failed. And I think when it comes to the sovereignty of the body, of course, the First Amendment's very important, but the Fourth Amendment too.
Yeah.
I don't think you even have a chance to defend yourself if people are invading not just your home, but invading the body itself without even having a discussion. And this was the heart of the disagreements with the COVID pandemic response, was that people's rights were completely circumvented. It was a basic human right to be able to choose what was inside your body and not. But the government they're done having a conversation about this. I think what they want, and they're very clear about what they want, they would like to implement smart cities through gradual integration, replacement of burned or destroyed territory, like you were talking about with California, or again with the human beings and the devices the humans carry around within themselves being the components which are the building blocks of this new society. And the mecca, and I'd say the paradigm, the absolute lodestar for them is the control of the human brain. Because no longer would you need to cheat in an election or try to do some kind of funny business with a false flag. If you can just control how people think, more than just getting them pissed off or making them happy, if you can control the direction they go, you don't even have to bother with predictions anymore. You are predicting it through the manipulation.
That's right. You're actually predicting the outcome. You are engineering the outcome. And again, something that Yuval has spoken about is like you're going to be ruled by the algorithm essentially. So again, not all reality necessarily, definitely a plan. So and we do want to talk about what people can do about it in a moment. I just really want to cover this quantum dot point because this was, I think, the kind of the key point for me. I've said at the outset that I think they could improve. They could introduce new things, but quantum dot is basically, from what I can see, enough to implement this system. You're talking about what are quantum dots? Briefly, semiconductor nanocrystals, a few nanometers in size, with unique optical and electronic properties. They play an emerging enabling role in biofoundries and future drug development. And we all know about Bill Gates' quantum dot microneedle patch, by the way, which hydrogel is the vehicle of that, primarily as multifunctional tools for imaging, tracking, targeted delivery, and theranostics, which is combined diagnosis and therapy. So anyway, the role in biofoundries of quantum dot is obviously we spoke about the design, build, test, learn cycle of the biofoundries and the role of graphene in that. But the quantum dots are enhancing that by tracking and imaging and testing. So they serve as bright, photostable fluorescent labels. Researchers tag the DNA, protein, or cells, or engineered constructs, interesting wording there, to track them in real time during high throughput screening. Their tunable emission enables multiplexing, which is multiple signals at once. Now, DNA templated quantum dots and hydrogels. DNA can template or assemble quantum dots into hydrogels or nanostructures. These are synthesized in biofoundry workflows for controllable, biocompatible materials. Examples include quantum dot DNA hydrogels that respond to enzymes for smart release. Now, that may sound, overly complex and crazy, and no, they're never going to be able to do that. Well, Bill Gates is already doing it. Like it's already an existing announcement of something they claim to have achieved. So it's not like this is sometime in the future. This is already here, by the way. And then you have a few other things I want to mention here, and I do actually have an article to show people about this. Give me a moment. So this is Nature, and it says multifunctional quantum dot DNA hydrogels. Okay, so again, lots of literature that you can look at that speaks about these things. Is not theories. These are in practice. You get biosensors and cell-free systems from hybrid quantum dot DNA or quantum dot protein assemblies that act as reporters in cell-free synthetic biology platforms. You have nanoreactors, which are protein cages or DNA structures in biofoundries that can biomineralize or grow quantum dot inside them for precise control. And the role in future drug development is what they call precision nanomedicine. That's it's going to be used for targeted drug delivery, theranostics, smart and controlled release, antimicrobial combination therapies, and real-time monitoring. This is already something that biofoundries are using. And you're talking about something that can already send real-time data. This is able to send when Albert Bourla tells you you can take a medication, we can monitor compliance in real time. That's what that is. Also, when you look at the National Blueprint for Biodefense, which was submitted to the White House under Biden, it talks about how USPS is going to be used to send these quantum microneedle patches to people to prevent pandemics in future. And they are, of course, this is quantum dot technology with a hydrogel layer that sends real-time data when it leaves the manufacturing plant, when it's on the truck being delivered to your house, once you've administered it, once it's inside your body, what it's doing inside your body. Again, this is the medical application, not to mention the covert applications. But you can see how this would be used as a mechanism of control when you have something like a digital ID that relies on you complying with preventing pandemics or whatever the case may be, keeping yourself in the best health possible in order to have your digital ID, lest you not be able to pay your property taxes. And that's what I worry about the most, Ed.
Well, certainly, and think back to the pandemic, the PCR test, which I think research has proven to show is just as deadly as the shots themselves. That we talk about not knowing the ingredient list for the shots. You have no idea what's in the end of that swab that you were instructed to stick up your nose. I was reading through the data on this. The quantum dot applications inside these biofoundry systems. The theranostics is such a compelling area that they're applying it. What theranostics essentially are. It's using basically this technology with dual purpose. It'll go into the body and it will be able to do the imaging of the tumor or the identifying of the rogue cell, and then it also will release the medicine or the drug to treat it, and it does this through a pH or light enzyme reaction. I've learned a lot about the pH inside the body because with my health journey, especially last year. I've certainly been very acute to try to alkalinize as much as I can, but they've also used the same concept because this theranostics, this aspect of the quantum dot nanocrystals, they also are using this now to sell the idea of testing through this. And look, it's so small, so non-invasive. This application, the testing application, is always the one which will be used most widespread because it's cheapest. It's also the least of the asks. If you ask someone to inject or put something in their body to treat some kind of horrible disease they have, you already have limited that group that can be exposed to this to very minimal. But if you're saying, I would like to test a large swath of people in a town or a city, you can pull off getting a 75% test rate. And thus, you've exposed that population to that technology while they thought they were just doing preventative measures and helping to what they used to say that to keep the number down, depress the positive count. Well, this is positive, I think, for the tech companies because they get a lot of test data from this, but also application. So the theranostics, among the others you mentioned, are incredibly troubling. And we have to be very wary of anyone who comes in saying they have a test or they have a means to prevent the next pandemic. That means is the introduction of nanotechnology into your body.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. The covert application of this is what terrifies me the most, Ed, because people can resist as much as they want. And by the way, let me just say that as a Christian, I believe your free will absolutely matters here. There is no way that when you're doing everything that you can with the knowledge that you have to resist this, and asking God for his protection, that this is going to overtake your body, right? But without that element, I'm concerned for people. I really am, because what ways have they figured out? Like James Giordano talking about being able to dismantle a resistance by lacing the top of a pen, like dismantle a whole resistance by coming into contact with one guy. What else can they do to us? How else can they manipulate us? This is MK Ultra on steroids, right? So this is my biggest concern. And so in terms of what people can do to protect themselves, first and foremost is your faith, believing that Jesus will protect you against this and asking for his help and doing everything that you can to be aware that this is happening and be diligent of the times that we're living in. But on a more physical level, Ed, I really do want to talk about something that you've been working on for a while, if you want to talk to people about that.
Sure. Now, you mentioned James Giordano. It's interesting the pivot that he's made over the last 3 years. And the pivot we made with my team, what died suddenly after the release of the film, was we wanted to really understand where the heck the elite were taking this technology. Well, the elite, like the mad scientists they employed, James Giordano, they were taking it toward directed energy weapons, manipulation through frequency, the complete circumventation of the human sovereignty of the mind and soul and spirit. And the interesting aspect for the last couple of years has been the focus on something called Havana syndrome, the attack on government officials via frequency or directed energy weapons. Much of this was very theoretical until it came to the raid in Venezuela against Nicolas Maduro, where the US government, the Trump administration, openly admitted to deploying a widespread, very effective energy weapon, a directed energy weapon from satellite-based and even from other localized sources. And they were able to not just disable people, they were to murder people, destroy the human body with this capability. Well, James Giordano has been making the rounds recently to talk about the capabilities of directed energy weapons. I just saw him on News Nation, and he's morphed from being the guy who would talk about how nanotechnology could take over the world to now directed energy weapons. And I think, again, there's a crossover. This crossover also has been in our work, and we've long been trying to figure out what can we do. Obviously, being close to the Lord and making sure our faith is solid, that I would know and I'd be able to discern the times that someone offers me the mark of the beast, that I would know what it is, and I would also have the courage to say no and stick to my faith.
Amen.
But past this, I've also been trying to get into shape. Spent a lot of time trying to detox my body. And one of the things we found, my team, Matt Hazen and Jesse Beltran, we've been doing a lot of tests on certain substances which can block the interoperability of this nanotech when it's placed inside you or when it's placed on you. We've done a series of studies in the United Kingdom and in the US where we will scan individuals and we'll get a baseline, and then we'll give them zeolite, actually zeolite with sea minerals mixed together. And this actually has an effect from these studies that we've now conducted, that it reduces, one, the transmissibility of the technology that has started to develop inside you or is present, and two, for the technology itself even being able to persist inside your body. And so we've developed a product that I'm taking, that Jesse and Matthew are taking to, and a lot of the targeted individuals, a lot of people that are trying to essentially either repair or resist from intervention from the government or from clandestine entities into their brain and their body. And this product's actually, you can find it at clearthefog.org. Clearthefog.org. It's called Clarity. Now, the side benefit that we found from this, Maria, is actually quite awesome. You will actually have the most vivid dreams that you've had in a long time. I started dreaming again when I started taking this product. And it is for a simple fact that much of the technology, many of the things that you're talking about here, not only is it dark, not only has it an evil undertone, but I believe that it was also meant, the bathing us in frequency, for example, with Wi-Fi. I think it was the dollar census. It was to take to decrease our connection to God and his
nature.
humanity and everything, nature. And thus, this product actually, in such an amazing way, is reestablishing it by simply cleansing you of a lot of this nano-based technology. I won't say it takes everything out, but my goodness, the results have been amazing. For people that were experiencing specific targetings, like they'd hear voices, they'd feel like a beam of energy come down on them, they'd be taken to the ground. They're taking this, and they're actually now seeing that no longer can someone intervene in this manner. The second thing that we're hearing is people are having the most vivid dreams of their lifetime. And that's clearthefog.org. We've actually set up a page for you and your audience. It's clearthefog.org/discount/Maria10. So you get a 10% off for anyone who's interested in trying this out and maybe dreaming again.
Yeah. Well, I'm all for anything that can help people, Ed. And you actually mentioned this on the last interview that we did with you and Jesse,
Yeah.
which and I've heard people getting incredible results from this, and what you're telling me about it as well. So I'm all for humans putting whatever they can into their war chest to resist this agenda. And by the way, if their ability to track and trace you and monitor you under the skin is reduced, guess what? That severely impedes their entire agenda. Oh,
100%. Because I don't think it works without us. I
yeah,
think that we are that last device on the chain, on the edge. It's not this cell phone. It's not the sensor that's in this camera or this TV or the lights. It's you and it's me. And if we can stop them from taking over our bodies, hijacking essentially our bodies to implement their hardware, their tech, I
yeah.
think we're going to stop them. And I don't think a smart city is possible without, again, the human being being circumvented, manipulated, and taken over.
I agree, and I don't think the mark of the beast is possible without them being able to hack us in this way, if you will. And of course, there will be protections that God can give us, will give us in those times. I really do believe it. I believe God will
I believe so
hide
too.
many people. I believe, He'll provide for people. And I also believe, by the way, in practicing some of those principles now, resisting a lot of this agenda. As you said, getting yourself as healthy as possible, caring for the temple of the Holy Spirit. These things all matter, and the more that we can do to sort of stifle their plans, even if it's just to stifle them, just to make it more difficult for them, I'm all for that.
Amen.
So I'll bring up this page again for everyone. It is clearthefog.org/discount/Maria10, so that you can get a 10% discount as well available for our viewers. So make sure that you're putting that specific link in, clearthefog.org/discount/Maria10. And this is really, really incredible. And I really just want to read this. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And this is part of it, looking after ourselves. Like I talk about the importance of tuning out. Like I used to spend a lot of time online right up until sort of nighttime Saturday. I have reduced that a little bit now. I've reduced the amount of time that I spend online on Saturdays, even, because I'm like, I want to spend as much time as I can connecting with the real world, making sure that I'm in the best shape that I can be, unplugged from this crazy matrix, so that when I'm in here, I'm effective for the people, right? Because I want to warn people as much as I possibly can. I really encourage people to do that. I encourage people. I mentioned this on a broadcast recently, Ed. There was a study that was released about these children in Europe. They replaced the rubber mats of the playgrounds and changed it, like brought in logs and rocks and dirt. And within 3 weeks, so the parents of those children agreed to allow their children to undergo blood testing to monitor the real-time health effects.
Wow.
And the blood of the children was astronomically different just after 3 weeks. They were much healthier. Their immune systems were improving just from playing in the dirt. So I said this, and it may seem trivial to some, but once I reported on that study, I was like, okay, I'm going to not wear gloves as much when I'm outside. I'm actually going to touch dirt. I'm going to pick up rocks with my bare hands, being careful of the scorpions because I'm in Texas. And but it's like it makes a real difference in your psyche, and any other tools that you can have to make that difference in your psyche are vital. So again, clearthefog.org/discount. Is it discount with a T/Maria10 is where people can go, and I'll link it in the description as well so that people can get there easily. And tell your friends about it as well, by the way. Tell people, let's get our war chests filled with whatever it is that we can to defeat this nonsense. And if I can put a spanner in their works of connecting us to their 6G satanic nonsense, I'm going to be doing that.
Amen. Look, when it comes down to it, this reality that we're all going to have to live through here, we have to be looking for solutions. And I think the reason why we invested in this product was because I like you, I'm sitting there wondering, it's like, okay, I'm reporting on the creation of the beast system day in, day out, but what am I doing to try to protect even myself and my family? You mentioned this study, from Europe. I've seen it with my own eyes, just watching how children interact with the technology. And I know that, interesting enough, especially here in our sector, in our specific kind of quadrant, the people that are most aware, we are hypocrites in the sense of the technology usage and these things. And I've been very acutely aware of this myself. It's so difficult to disconnect from. And I realize now, that especially for the extent of my career in journalism, I was developing a chemical bond to electronics.
Oh yeah.
Like it's insane. And all I can do is in steps, in small pieces, like wherever I can, I try to read a physical book. Kick me for killing the trees. I try to print an article out instead of reading it on the computer. I am limiting what I use artificial intelligence for. I'm trying to self-navigate to a restaurant or to a city and these other things as much as I can, because in order for us to maintain our humanity, and especially as I would say that leaders in the health activism movement and researchers and journalists and people want to help our fellow man, we ourselves have to make sure that we are coming up with practical solutions. And like I found that the natural detox, I think, is going to be a version of a Sabbath for many of us if we're not already doing it. Anyone listening to this broadcast, you're in our industry, or heck, you don't have to be in our industry to do this, but please disconnect. Okay, when you're with people, put the phone down, throw it across the room.
Oh my gosh, when I see people at a restaurant and they're like, with their families and they're on their phones, I want to shake them by their shoulders. I'm like, I will not even take that thing out of my bag. I'm here with humans. And, do limit your amount of entertainment consumption. I know that people need to tune out sometimes. Of course, I do it as well. Sometimes you just want something brainless, and sometimes that involves watching something brainless on TV. I get that, but try to limit it, and listen to when you're picking podcasts. And I don't say this to get more people to listen to me. I just mean listen to people that are giving you the truth. I recently made the point about the fertilizer shortages, Ed. Influencers are out here telling us this is the golden age. Meanwhile, we've got like food scarcity around the corner, or at least price hikes, and manufactured food scarcity, by the way. And it's like they're not giving you what you need to survive. Please listen to the warnings. Please listen to people like Ed who are actually giving us solutions. Again, that link is clearthefog.org/discount/Maria10. It's in the description below. And please also follow Died Suddenly on social media. I don't know if you want to also give your personal X, Ed, but I've got
it's just
here
at Real Edward Szall on X, and of course you find all our work at Died Suddenly _ on X and at Died Suddenly News on Substack. But yeah, we're so glad to be working with fighters like you, Maria. You've been such a lion in this fight, and you haven't wavered. Again, the very topic that you felt the Lord drove you to delve through, to scream from the mountaintops about. That near and present danger is now here and being implemented. And thank God that you were prepared for a time like this. So I just find myself honored again that I get a chance to talk to you and I can call you my friend. So
I appreciate that. Clayton Morris on Redacted recently said to me, Maria, you were on this very broadcast warning about this like 2 months ago. Do you feel vindicated? And I said, this isn't about being right. It's not about being right. Like and he didn't mean it in that way, by the way. He's a really, really lovely person. But it's like, in fact, we wish we were wrong about all of this, but we're not. And more evidence is mounting that we were right about it all. So let's do whatever we can to impede their plans. clearthefog.org/discount/Maria10 in the description below. And thank you again, Ed, for all of your time. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. Please share this so that people realize how serious this is. God bless.
God bless you too.
The New World Order has openly declared war on the free people of the world, and now they're telling us to expect catastrophic cyber attacks over the next 2 years. Weather events, no power, grids down, mobile cell services out. Contact your loved ones anywhere, anytime with the satellite phone store. The Bivy is a revolutionary GPS-based device which allows you to send SMS messages via your phone even if you have no mobile or cell service. Galileo will ensure you always stay in contact with Z Media, other trusted information sources, and your loved ones that can update you in real time in the event of an emergency. Don't be caught out and unprepared for the unprecedented times we are living in. Stay 10 steps ahead through secure, encrypted communication. Visit sat123.com/Maria and prepare yourself and your loved ones now.